Hello, my name is Dr. Bagley. I'd like to thank you very much for joining me. I started a new program called Rising with Dr. Bagley. That's me, of course. What we're going to do is talk about various subjects. Today we have a great subject, but everything we're going to talk about is in the point of view of psychology, okay? Because I'm always interested in the state of mind of a person, and I want to help you understand the state of mind, the cause and effect, and how to help you rise above where you're at within relationships, finances, and other topics like that. So let's go ahead and get into today's subject. Today, we're going to talk more specifically about codependency. Codependency. What in today's discussion is one, what is codependency by definition? What does codependency look like? Where codependency starts and recovery from codependency. This is a webinar, as you already know, but if you would like to join me on the live webinar like others are right now, you can contact me by this phone number right here, or email me. The phone number, you can text me, email me, and what I'll do is the next time I record, I'll send you a link, and then you can link on and join the discussion. Everybody, so when you see me off, I'm looking at everybody else and questions via text and other means. So without any other things, let's go ahead and get right into codependency. What is it? Codependency is a type of dysfunctional helping relationship where one person supports or enables another person's drug addiction. So any kind of addiction, it can be alcoholism, gambling addictions, poor mental health, juvenile behavior, irresponsibilities, or underachievement. Persons like these have these types of issues. So more specifically, all right, so that's the definition, but more specifically, what does it look like? Okay, so ultimately it's when someone brings the abuse towards someone else. So one person is receiving it, the other person is lashing out. Let's take physical abuse, for example, okay? The codependency point of view is they receive the abuse, and then after the abuse, they are quiet behind it, meaning they excuse it, give reason behind it. They're just drinking, they're just having a bad day, things of this nature. The codependent person is the one who's receiving it. And then they're the ones who are being quiet about it. You see a lot of this in bad relationships where a person is being abused and you question them, why are you still with them? Gambling, for example, is an addiction. So they're gambling the money away. Why are you still with them? Why are you still borrowing them money? Why are you still giving it? Why are you still supporting them? Drug addictions, why are you still supporting them years and years into this relationship and not being able to break up with them? So the question on the outside looking in is the why are you with them point of view. Internal codependent person says, well, here's the reason why, okay? But ultimately it's, and I'm using the physical point of view as far as the illustration here, but ultimately it's the one who has the issue at hand, let it be an addiction, let it be an abusive situation, bad behavior, whatever. And then the other person is receiving it and not doing anything about it, not calling the police, not leaving them, just maintaining the relationship and let time continue on, okay? So let's get some definitions. What does codependency look like? Number two is abuse, which is a verbal, and that means an action. Abuse happens whenever someone fails to respect the rights and dignity of another. So it's a verbal abuse, can be from your stupid point of view, or physical abuse, and it could be all the way to sexual abuse, which is part of the physical. But it's I do not respect you. Alcohol plays a part of it. Frustrations, anger issues plays a part of it. All of these things are an abuse. Trauma is another word. It's a noun. It's a state of being. Deeply distressing or disturbing experience. Now, one of the common things in codependency is what we call post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. This is when the person over a period of time, like the illustration in the picture, has been abused, and then that abuse in content state of mind brings a trauma to her. In this illustration, it could be him or her, it doesn't matter, the gender. So post-traumatic stress, or PTSD, but ultimately it's the trauma, which is a distressing or disturbing experience, and the relationship by itself is a disturbing experience, because even if they leave that relationship, they're then post, which is after the trauma or traumatic stress. The disorder is the I'm not sure how to move from that to the next relationship point of view. So in content, what that is when they leave a traumatic experience, meaning being abused, and they get freed, that post PTSD will be brought into the new relationship, and then if it's not dealt properly, then that communication between the new relationship is distressed. All right, so let's go into PTSD. Most can develop after a very stressful, frightening, or distressing event, or after a prolonged traumatic express. So that is what PTSD is. A lot of times when people don't hear about it, you might hear about it in contents of a car accident, and you killed somebody in the car accident. That's PTSD, also a post-traumatic stress. That could be an event that happened. Codependency, especially in a trauma or in abuse of that leads to trauma, like physical, sexual, even verbal, that trauma over a period of time could, like I said before, cause PTSD. All right, so PTSD and codependency. All right, so let's look into this. There's 2 point of views that I really want you to understand the PTSD and codependency point of view. One is, yes, it's the individual who's receiving it. Let it be the adult part of it. They're the ones who are receiving the stress. They're the one who's receiving the experience. And over time, that is a traumatic experience. But there's also another point of view, and that is the child's point of view. It is a traumatic experience when they see the parents go through this violence, let it be verbal, let it be physical, but this experience as they see, and they're growing up, the child developing stages, they're growing up wondering why this is happening, and then that's traumatizing them to the point of when they become older, they're accepting the exact same thing that their parent is experiencing. Because what is now trauma to a child, when they get older, it is no longer a trauma, it's a normal way of living. All right, so let's go more into that a little bit. Emotional abuse, mother or father treated violently, okay? Household substance abuse, household mental illness, parental separation or divorce. And a lot of people don't understand, is that a traumatic event? Absolutely is, in the point of view of a child, especially if the parents really have a bad experience through the divorce. Child's with the mom, and the mom hates the father. The child's with the father, and the father hates the mother. And so people don't realize children are stuck right in the middle when the two parents hate each other, bashing each other, and the child is going through this traumatic experience, and which we call divorce. Incarcerated household, meaning member, meaning dad goes away, mom can't go outside. All right. Emotional neglect. Sometimes children want to be hugged and kissed and be appreciative of what they do in school and around the environments. But when you have a parent who is, let's use alcohol, for example, when you have a parent who's drinking, they're slashing out on the child, there's no emotional acceptance. And then you have the person who's receiving it, like the adult woman in this picture here. She is more concerned about herself. Yes, she wants to take care of her child, but ultimately that trauma between herself and the mate is very hard on her. So she has to gather herself up and sometimes lets the child be by themselves. So there is an emotional neglect there. And then the physical neglect. Everyone wants to be touched. Everyone wants to be hugged. Now, I'm not saying slobber all over everyone, but the whole point is the child wants to be touched and hold and let them know that they're being appreciative. What happened to the idea of parents kissing their children goodnight before they go to bed, for example? So where does codependency start? This is the third topic. Believe it or not, it actually starts at the children's level. So they see the trauma. So the man, he may hit her or may not hit her. It's the fact that it's the trauma, the yelling, the screaming, that point of view, the threatening, verbal, physical threatening point of view, and the child or children is experiencing this point. That's really where it starts. Now, second stage is the child would then tend to go to the parent who's receiving the abuse. So let's say in this example, the mother who's been through the abuse, the child will always go to the mother and try to get that mother to calm down. What is it that you need, mom? What can I do to help you, mom? What is it that, you know what I mean? So it's that point of view of coming to the abused parent and comforting them and being with them that actually supersedes their own needs because they want to comfort and take care and provide a loving environment for the abused one. So it's not just a trauma, a PTSD point of view of the child who's viewing the abuse point of view. It's also now the child who experienced it and then now becomes the caretaker of the very one who's been abused, okay? Now, in child developing, all of the developing stages, and you guys can do the research on that, some of the things that happens as they grow up, they become people-pleasing. They're not concerned about themselves. They're always concerned about someone else's feelings. They were caretaker. So they're looking for someone who they can help. Dysfunctional communication. This is more so where they don't understand how to communicate. And let's use the alcohol point of view. The person comes in and they drink too much and then they start yelling and screaming. Well, it's a dysfunctional communication when they talk to the kids. Hey, kids, be quiet. Your dad has been drinking a little too much. And then the other mate has to walk on eggshells so they don't pull a trigger from the alcohol person, okay? Dependency now. They feel dependent because the abused person, I feel like I need to go and make sure that my parent is the one who's been abused is okay. And then they become dependent on that point of view. And when they grow up, they also who are in an abusive relationship feel dependent on that person because they're the caretaker, because they're the people pleasing. And when they leave that type of relationship, the identity of who am I is questioned, okay? So they become dependent, not necessarily financial, but more emotional dependencies. The denial point of view, because in content, outside looking in, if if I see a gentleman hitting on a woman, to me, that's an abuse. That's a trauma effect. But to them, who was raised up in this environment from their parents to now their own relationship, they don't see it as being out of the ordinary. They see it as a ordinary way. This is what I do because this is what my parents did. This is what I did, and this is just what we do. And so they're in denial that they're in a relationship that's an abusive one, that in a period of time it could be traumatizing. Okay, so that is denial. Depression. Yes, depression is a key component because their own emotional, their own state of mind, their own emotion is now, I can't be who I want to be because I now have to take care of my mom. In this picture, for example, when the child grows up, I have to take care of my mate. And so they're depressed on the backside because they're denying themselves and they can't find enjoyment. They can't find the emotional stimulation needed to grow a healthy esteem. Okay. They could be eating disorders. Behind it, it can be anger issues, and it can be sexual or intimate issues. These are some of the things, especially a physical abuse growing up. We call it child abuse, sexual abuse, and as they grow up, the anger issues, the denial of depression, the eating disorders is how we deal with it, the sexual intimacy issues. I don't want to be touched, or I want to be touched by a lot of people. So it just depends on the person by themselves. So this is pretty much where the child developing stages starts. It starts at the youth level, growing up into their adult level, and then it's carried on into their own relationships, and that's how the cycle, if you will, continues on. All right, recovering from codependency. The key is this: change is not easy. It takes time and involves the following 4 steps. 1 is awareness, abstinence, acceptance, and actions. Now, the reason it's not easy, guys and ladies, is because growing up in your child developing stages, especially if this happened to you or someone who in their childhood, growing up in their family, it brings out and develops their character. Okay. Character is the individual action of the person. Personality is the collectiveness of the characters. So one character is this way. I'm trying to think of a character, but a character is this kind of way, and then the personality is different. So the change is we're changing characters of a person. For example, esteem point of view, a self-esteem to a low to a high self-esteem is a character building type situation. The personality of the person is the collectiveness of different types of characters. Okay, so let's go into awareness. And I know I chopped that up, but we'll get into that more in a minute. All right, codependency, they deny their own feelings and especially their needs. This is the first step. You have to be aware that this is what you're doing, particularly emotional needs for nurturing and real intimacy. Sometimes it's hard for a codependent person to realize what is normal and what is not normal, especially if they're developed into a particular type of lifestyle within their families. The cause and effect, this is the leads to low self-esteem. Okay, so let's talk about esteems for a second. Self, of course, is self, low meaning the low versus high. The esteems is in 2 parts. So in 2 parts, how I feel about myself and how I feel about my ability to do something. So the first one, how do I feel about myself? When I look in the mirror, what do I see? I see something not good. I'm not happy about what I see. So that's an esteem point of view, and that's self, and that's low. How do I feel about my ability? If you've been in a profession for a while, you might feel good about your ability to do your profession. So that could be high self-esteem. And this is the trick of finding, am I or are you or somebody else, are they codependent? This is the trick, because a person in a relationship point of view might have low self-esteem, how they look and feel, view themselves in a relationship, and the same day at the same time could have high self-esteem, how they look, how they feel about the ability of what they do at work. They can be high self-esteem at their job, the profession. So when you're at your job and you look at your coworkers, you're thinking, oh, everything is nice and normal. Until we talk about personal relationships, and then they're in denial. And so that denial state doesn't bring any triggers in our mind, especially at the workplace, that anything is going wrong at home. And then when something does go wrong at home, it's a big surprise because, oh my gosh, I didn't know that person was going through that. Because the person is in denial of what's really going on, and they have high self-esteem in this position. And so therefore, a non-trained person will look at them and say, that's a normal person. Okay, so be very careful if you're outside looking in, and be aware that you are, if you're inside this position. If you deny your feelings and you have to put someone else above yours, then that is a problem. But let me define that a little bit more. We're talking about the person like your mate. We're not talking about kids, because we always try to put our feelings in above our kids, because they're trying to grow and they have needs before our needs, and we want to make sure they're good. But we're talking about when someone comes home, and this is your dating, this is your fiance, this is your husband, wife, whatever this situation, but they come home and you're more concerned about them than you are about you. And when you try to express yourself, they're more concerned about themselves versus I want to take care of you. That's what I'm talking about. And nurturing and real intimacy. Intimacy is not just sex, it's the romance of a relationship. If it's not romantic enough, if it's problematic, then that is a problem. And we have to figure out, is it an addiction? Is it an abuse? It's something that's going on that causes the intimacy issue there. So to reverse these destructive habits, you first must be aware of them, or yourself. You have to be aware of yourself. And the most damaging obstacles to self-esteem is negative self-talk. Negative self-talk. So be aware of who you are, how you feel, and is your feelings being expressed? And if it's not being expressed, then you might need to come to terms of what and where you're at. Okay? So awareness is the very first one. 2, abstinence is necessary to recover from codependency. The goal is to bring your attention back to yourself. Now, abstinence meaning you have to break up. Now, I'm not saying if you're married, I'm not saying you get a divorce. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if the person is, let's use gambling, for example. He's a gambler, or let's say he, and then she's the codependent person. If he is the gambler, I'm not saying divorce each other. All I'm saying is you have to separate yourself some kind of way and put yourself first, and then that person, him, second, in content. he can stop gambling, going through counsel or therapy or something, and that might help the situation, and especially if it's the situation of the relationship hasn't been traumatized too much, then that relationship can merge back together. But if it merges back together, the codependent person must be attentive to self. The goal is to bring your attention back to yourself. What do you want? What do you need? What do you like? What do you dislike? And then have a internal rather than external take control. Internally, this is how I feel. This is what I want. Take control, okay? Your intentions are primarily motivated by your values. What is your values? Church, higher power. Needs. What is your needs? I want someone to hold me, caress me. And feelings. I want someone to listen to me and know that I'm going through this also. And then not someone else's. Do not allow someone else to take your needs and your feelings and your values and squash them away like you're nothing. Take control of yourself, and then take control of the situation. If it's possible for that other person to get counsel, let them get counsel. If you need to separate, separate. And worst case scenario, if you need to divorce, divorce. Because abstinence is important for recovery. You have to have abstinence, okay? The third one is acceptance. You have to accept this is who you are. This is something that you viewed when you were a child growing up. This is who you are. So healing essential involves self-acceptance. This is not only a step, but a lifelong journey. For example, when you feel sad, lonely, or guilty, instead of making yourself feel worse, you have self-compassion, soothe yourself, and take steps to feel better. Join organizations, join things that you like, and then be part of that, all right? As your self-esteem grows, confidence grows. Now, keep in mind the two, again, we talk about the two separate ones. My low self-esteem is in relationships, and my high is in my profession. Do not use your profession as a dependent and a crutch to supersede your low self-esteem in relationships, okay? What this means is self-esteem, you need confidence to grow, meaning you have to go back out there and try it again. Date, but take your time. Be aware of the person, okay? Be aware that if they have a problem, you're not there to fix them or help them. It's supposed to be a combination of growing together, not one person helping the other person, okay? And a lot of people get into relationships, especially the females. They get into this point of view. He's not 100%, so I'm getting into the relationship because I know I can bring value to him. Okay, no, I don't think so. Long term, you're not going to bring value to him, especially, and I'm not saying you won't, I'm just saying specifically, especially if you're the type who has a codependency issue, okay? So self-esteem needs to grow in your weakness, the low self-esteem point of view, which is in your relationships. Confidence will grow. Consequently, you do not allow others to abuse you or tell you what to do. You have to take control of self. You have to make yourself happy. No one else can make you feel better. And then the fourth one. Insight without action only gets you so far. In order to grow self-awareness, self-acceptance must be accompanied by new behaviors. You're not going to get the normal guys that you normally get. You're aware of all those guys, and I'm talking to the females, these normal guys, they all have issues and problems and abuse situations and addictions, and you're going to find someone who doesn't have none of that. That's a new behavior. So in content, what am I saying? You have to change you. The people who's attracted to you are only attracted to you because you're expressing you. So if that means you have to dress better, if that means you have to study body language so you know how to be stronger versus a weak person, if you have to get some more knowledge in certain issues, I know later on in some of my shows we're going to talk about what it means to date and how to pick dating and all of that stuff. But your behavior, how you act, how you do things has to change. And it's going to be uncomfortable at first, but then it's going to be comfortable, and because your esteem is starting to rebuild itself. So in other words, involves taking risk and venture outside of your comfort one or comfort zone, if more commonly known. It also means setting internal boundaries by keeping commitments to yourself, meaning you're not going to do this, you are going to do this, or saying no to your critics. Don't worry about somebody else. This person might be the best looking person, might have more money than everybody else, but you feel like you can bring value because they're drinking too much. No. Old habits, you have to change your old habits and take it from there. Okay? All right. So this is the time that I have right now, and I thank you very much for joining me. Codependency, in short of what I've just basically said, today's discussion is what is codependency by definition. Okay, so we now know what by definition it is. So what does codependency look like? It can be the adult point of view or the child's point of view. Where do codependency starts? It starts from the child and bleeds into the adult. And recover those 4 steps. You got to be aware, you got to take acceptance, you got to take action and move forward from this. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about codependency or anything within what I've said, you can please contact me via email or call or text me. I'll be more than happy to help you within this subject. My name is Dr. Bagley. Again, thank you very much for joining me, and look for me for this next program. I'll talk to you later, and until next time, bye-bye.